hear about the Strait of Hormuz in the news all the time, right? It's always this major flashpoint for global tension. But what if I told you that for over 100 years, this exact same waterway was the prize of a small and pretty unlikely European kingdom? Okay, let's dive into the absolutely wild, forgotten story of Portugal's empire in the Persian Gulf.
So why all the fuss? Why is this little sliver of water, just 40 kilometers wide, so incredibly important? Well, today it's all about oil. A massive chunk, about a fifth of the entire world's daily oil consumption, has to pass through here every single day. If this strait closes, even for a moment, it sends massive shockwaves through the entire global economy.
But way before oil was even a thing, this was the gateway for spices, for silks, for pearls. And for over a century, from the early 1500s all the way to 1622, this vital artery wasn't controlled by some local powerhouse, but by Portugal. I mean, how on earth did they manage to pull that off?
To get why they wanted it so badly, you first have to understand the prize. Long before any Europeans showed up, the island kingdom of Hormuz was already a legendary hub of global trade. We're talking an unbelievably wealthy emporia.
I mean, you just have to listen to how people talked about it back then. A 16th century Portuguese historian, João de Barros, put it like this: the world is a ring and Hormuz is a precious stone set in it. And that wasn't just some flowery poetic language. It really captures the city's immense reputation for wealth.
And here's the wild thing. Hormuz itself, it was basically a barren, arid island. It produced almost nothing on its own. All of its wealth came from its location. It was the crossroads where you'd find Arabian horses, Persian silks, Indian spices, Gulf pearls, and Chinese porcelain all changing hands. It was kind of like the Amazon warehouse of the 16th century.
So how does a small country like Portugal, thousands of miles away, even begin to think about controlling a place like this? Well, the answer lies in a brilliant and, frankly, brutal strategy dreamed up by this guy, Afonso de Albuquerque. He had a key insight. Portugal didn't need to conquer vast empires. It just needed to control the gates.
Albuquerque's plan was so elegantly simple. It all focused on controlling 3 maritime choke points. Number 1, seize Malacca, and you control the gateway to the Pacific. Number 2, seize Aden, and you block off the Red Sea trade route. And number 3, the real jewel in the crown, seize Hormuz, and you dominate the Persian Gulf. You control those 3 spots, you basically own the entire Indian Ocean trade network.
But wait, how could they possibly take on the massive empires in the region, like the Safavids in Persia or the Mughals in India? Well, it all came down to a huge imbalance. You see, the Eastern empires were what we call gunpowder empires, massive armies focused on land. But they had very weak navies, if any at all. The Portuguese, on the other hand, were masters of the sea, with ships that were essentially floating fortresses armed with advanced cannons. On the water, they were playing a completely different game. And in 1507, this technological advantage was put to the ultimate test. Albuquerque shows up at Hormuz with this tiny fleet, setting the stage for what looked like a totally impossible David versus Goliath showdown for the Gulf.
And just look at these numbers. It's absolutely staggering. Albuquerque had 460 men and just 6 ships. The Kingdom of Hormuz, they had something like 30,000 men and hundreds of vessels. The result? The Portuguese had 11 guys wounded. The Hormuzese side lost around 900 people. This wasn't really a battle, it was a straight-up demonstration of overwhelming naval firepower.
And Albuquerque himself was every bit as bold as his strategy. After the battle, envoys from the Shah of Persia, who was technically the overlord of Hormuz, showed up demanding the Portuguese pay tribute. Albuquerque's reply is legendary. He presented them with cannonballs and bullets and said that was the currency Portugal used to pay its debts.
Now, funnily enough, that first attempt in 1507 didn't actually stick. He had a mutiny on his hands and was forced to leave, but he swore he wouldn't cut his beard until Hormuz was his. He came back in 1515, and this time he was smarter. He took advantage of a power struggle going on inside the Hormuzi court and managed to establish permanent control without another major fight. So what did this Portuguese century in Hormuz actually look like? Well, it wasn't your typical colonial empire. It was something different, something totally focused on the sea.
The key to their entire operation was this thing called the cartaz system. What was it? Essentially, a naval trade license. If you were a local merchant, you had to buy a Portuguese cartaz to sail your ship. If you were caught without one, your ship and all your goods could be taken or just sunk.
It was basically a protection racket on an oceanic scale, and it's how they controlled the sea lanes.
And get this, how many soldiers did it take to maintain control over one of the world's richest ports? Typically around 400. That's it. That tiny number tells you everything you need to know about their strategy. They weren't there to rule the people on land, they were there to rule the ships at sea.
And this gets to a really key point. This wasn't traditional colonialism. The goal wasn't to conquer vast territories or rule over huge populations. Nope. The goal was supremacy over the sea routes. They let the local king stay on his throne, as long as he paid tribute and did what they said. It was more of a protectorate, all designed to regulate and, of course, tax trade.
Now, the politics of this whole thing were fascinatingly complex. The Portuguese weren't just fighting everyone. They actually made an alliance of convenience with the powerful Safavid Empire in Persia. Why? Well, they had a common enemy, the expanding Ottoman Empire. It created this really complex dance of cooperation and tension, a classic case of the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
But of course, this kind of dominance couldn't last forever. By the early 1600s, the whole balance of power in the Indian Ocean started to shift, and that spelled the beginning of the end for Portuguese Hormuz.
So here's a quick look at how that century played out. You have the first attack in 1507, the permanent conquest and fortress in 1515, and then in 1622, the fall. After about 115 years, their grip on the strait was finally broken.
So what happened? Well, a new naval power showed up on the scene, England. Shah Abbas I of Persia, who was pretty tired of Portuguese control, saw his chance. He teamed up with the English East India Company, combining his powerful land forces with their naval power. This new Anglo-Persian alliance laid siege to the fortress, and in 1622, they forced the Portuguese to surrender. The monopoly was officially over.
Today, the Portuguese fortress is just ruins, but the strait itself is as strategic as it's ever been. And this incredible story from 500 years ago leaves us with a big question for today. What can a 16th century maritime empire, one that controlled global trade with just a few ships and forts, teach us about the enduring power of these strategic choke points in our own deeply interconnected world?